What I try to do is either tell a story or express an emotion or a thought or something as clearly as possible. And most of my work is oriented towards people. If I'm making an abstract, it has some kind of a human element. And if when I'm doing people, I do it in such a way that it's more abstract or minimalized, so that you get the feeling through the movement rather than putting in faces and details like that. And because I want it all to make it also very universal. If I'm making a person in any kind of an emotional state, it doesn't have to be a manner or movement, or I just want it to be more general. So that's what's common throughout my work. So my sculptures range from this size to 15 feet. In bronze, wood, plexiglass, wax, stone. That's about it. And plexiglass also can be done in different ways. You can use plexiglass in very thin sheets, and you use them differently. You heat them and you shape them. Or you can use them, you carve into them just like you carve stone with chisels and all that. This is a non-Chinese person with a Chinese background. That's my life story. This is carved in the front, and that is carved in the back, because it's not tangible. It's a memory. Each material has its own properties that makes it special. And that's the special of plexiglass. You can do the back and the front, and you can see them all, and it works with each other. I chiseled this. These are the chisel marks. And from these chisel marks, I had to get back to this smoothness. When you start chiseling, it chops off at little pieces and just attacks you. When you buy these chunks of plexiglass like that, they come protected with paper. And when I was removing the paper, I wasn't very careful. And I got 2 little chips there. And if I would try to smooth that surface down to that level, it couldn't happen. So I put 2 butterflies in there instead of those little holes. I used those little holes and put in 2 butterflies. This is profile of a lady. Right? This is the hair here. Mm-hmm. This is the shoulder. This is the chin, the nose. Profile of a lady. And the eye is carved on the other side, but you still see it on this side. This was my first stone sculpture. Until then I worked in clay and had some of my clay pieces made in bronze later. But this was my first piece of stone. And I was inspired by Brancusi. Every stone has, every material actually, has its own properties that make them special. For instance, this one has very little grain. It's almost solid color throughout, which means you can do anything with it, and the color won't fight the shapes. That's what I like about this one. You know, the more you smooth it out, the more the color comes out. I have a blue stone there, it was light blue. When I bought it, I said in the store, I want the blue stone, blue color. It says, here's the selection. What I could see was white stones like you see outside. He says it's a blue color, okay. So I bought the stone. And at first, while I was chiseling the shapes, it was a white stone. And when I finished chiseling all the shapes and started smoothing it with the sandpaper, the color started coming out. There were 4 stones that I bought in Chile. And as I started sanding them, the colors started coming out. I must show you. Look at the colors. It was dusty and you really couldn't see what the colors were. You really couldn't. And here it's not really shaped, to the end. You can see all the different colors. This one here is self-destruction. It's just like people. They start from the bottom. They know nothing. They learn to walk, they learn to talk, they learn to go to school, they learn to develop, and they grow and grow and grow. And at some point in their lives, they turn into themselves and destroy themselves with drugs, with violence, with all kinds of things. They destroy their relationships, they destroy their health, they destroy their lives, and there it is, destroying itself stage by stage by stage. And these are the stages, yes? These are the chisel marks. And from the chisel marks, I had to get back to this smoothness. It's not the other way around. I took something smooth and broke into it. People, that's what it looks like, but that's not what it is. The process is in reverse. And that's the color of the stone before it starts being smoothed out. This one is Tai Ch. I had it done first in that kind of a stone, and I sold it, and I made a copy in several different ways. And I like it in white because it shows all the nuances of the tones. I have this in black, but that doesn't show up as well. But every shape, every shadow shows up on this one, and that's why I like it in white. I was interviewed on TV a couple of times because the woman who interviewed me, she saw this sculpture, she wanted this. I was asked to participate in shows because of this one, and I have it enlarged in Israel in black granite, shiny, shiny black granite at the Tel Aviv University, and it's huge. This is a survivor of the Holocaust. He is looking back at all the destruction. Here I just have a collection of stones which I just put together. On the spot at Tel Aviv University, each stone has a meaning. There's one that's like an open book, and there's one from a countertop, there's one from a rooftop, there's one from a cemetery with some Hebrew lettering, and each one is beautifully finished, and they're all smashed. And he's crossing over all that destruction, and he's pushing forward and looking back. The arm that's not a support system. Look at this. I brought it to my sister when it was still in clay, before it was made in bronze. And she looked at it and she says, after a few minutes, she says, "Take it away, I can't stand it anymore." Her neighbors upstairs had just lost their son in one of the wars in Israel just then. And she said, that's exactly the way they were at the funeral. Take it away, I can't stand it anymore. They arouse emotions. That sculpture I would have loved to have big somewhere, either in a cemetery or some Holocaust center, because most of the pieces done about the Holocaust are about the people suffering and so forth. These are about the ones who are remembering. These are not the ones who went through it. These are the ones who are remembering, who survived or weren't affected by it. Like we were living in China, we weren't affected by it, but our families were killed, yes. I'd heard about friends who were breaking up, and that's what I was thinking about. I called it breaking up. When you break up, you go in your own separate ways. And it's never a good emotion. It's sad, it's upset, it's annoyed, it's whatever. And this stone pretty much represents breakup. Look how broken it is, whichever way you look at it. It's a beautiful stone, a beautiful relationship that broke, that's cracked. And the only thing I did with this stone was the eyes. There's no face to it. There's nothing else to express emotion except the stone itself. It's broken on all sides. It's here, it's cracked, it's broken there. It's a slashed relationship. It's not something that sort of fizzled out. It's slashed. This is the continuous connection between the university, the donor, and the student. And this I did out of sticks of wax. They're very soft and pliable, and they come in different shapes, and I used the sticks, and I knotted one and the other and the third, and at the tips I heated the two sticks and put them together, so you don't see where it starts and where it ends. It's just one continuous flow of movement. And I didn't want something big and cumbersome, because people would say, this doesn't go with the style of art in my house. I don't know where to put a pedestal and things like that. This can sit on a windowsill or on a desk or anywhere. I belonged to a medallic society, and I was told that anything that's within this size can be considered medallic art. There was this international show with about, I don't know how many participants, very, very many different countries represented as well. I think something like 80 or something. Anyway, the Americans decided to have our own theme, because we didn't know if they'd tell us what the theme is and that we'd have no time to make it. So the Americans decided to have our own theme. And the theme was attaining harmony. So this says seeing with our hearts, and this says harmony. And there's the seeing, and there are the hearts.
Do you have one place that makes most of your molds?
All of my molds. Is Dominic Ranieri. It's like comparing a diner or a McDonald's with a high-end restaurant. Dominic Ranieri is way up there. I worked with him once and got sold on him, and I don't go to anybody else. He does perfect work. He did the Holocaust survivor and sent it to Israel. He did the one for Shalom's grave. He does all my copies. I don't even bother to go anywhere else.
You know, as an artist, you're entrusting something you've given birth to.
Absolutely, absolutely. And this one speaks for itself. It's just the dancing. I wanted to catch the flow of the material, the movement of the people, the stretch, just wanted to capture the dance, that's all. Now, what people don't realize if they're not into sculpture is that every angle should work with every other angle. As you move it along, it's not a back and a front and one side and another side. It's not a box. Every line has to have its continuity with the next inch.
So you really have to think in the round.
You do think around.
Mm-hmm.
One doesn't usually think along these lines unless you're into sculpture. Along the way you change things as you work, according to the material and so forth. But I always start with a preconceived idea because it takes a long time to do a sculpture. And it's not a spontaneous thing to do. And some people work directly into the stone, for instance. I can't do that because sometimes you knock off a piece and then you say the next day you come in a different mood and you say, well, I needed that piece there. What do you do with that? Okay. At first I used to draw them. Not draw them, I tried to sketch, but then I said it works better because you draw something in 2 dimensions which you have to make in 3 dimensions. It doesn't work.
So you start to picture it in your mind.
I picture it in my mind. Is the Israeli Air Force Center asked me to do something for them. And when the director came to us, she said, okay, she spoke to Shalom about donating and so forth. And then she says, how about you give us sculpture because you were in the Air Force as well. Okay. I was thinking, I'm not going to make an airplane. Of course not. I'm going to make how airplanes fly. And these are the flight patterns of the different types of aircraft. This is a bomber carrier, just takes off and goes its way. This one is a helicopter. It shoots up straight, flies around in circles. It's open for rescue purposes. The only airplane in the world that's open for rescue or for anything are the helicopters. This one is a fighter plane, and this one is a rocket. And all the Israeli Air Force planes have a Star of David in a circle on their body, imprinted on the body. So I made it a blue Star of David. Instead of having an aluminum circle or a blue circle that would completely destroy the composition, the circle at the center is shrubs, and life continuity in Air Force Center in Herzliya. This one here is one of my recent works. And this one says, losing myself by bits and pieces. This one is positive, life. That one is negative, death. And if you touch it in there, the eyes, the nose, everything is in there, in negative. So you lose your eyesight, you lose your hearing, you will lose your mobility, you get all kinds of surgery, a breast, whatever, a kidney, all kinds of, yes, and then you're gone.
So there's something about it just being part of life that this happens?
It's part of life. This one, what it shows is how difficult it is to prop up, to hold up, to support someone who is totally falling apart and you know. And I was trying to show, I tried to offer this in Israel as representing those immigrants coming in completely, from the Holocaust and all that, completely drained and being brought ashore by the Israelis through the British mandate when Jews weren't allowed. Jews had to be smuggled in. And I asked the mayor of Tel Aviv if it would be possible to make it huge and put it on the beach inside the water. It never happened, but this was the idea for it. I was talking with my friend, Natasha, the one who was just visiting me. She's a very, very intelligent woman on many different levels. And we were talking about genes, the human genes. And she said to me, did you know that when you put the very beginning in the Petri dish, you have the genes of the fish, the child, person, a pig, and a hen. They are all identical. For 4 days, you don't know which one is what it's going to be when you see those genes in the Petri dish. On the 5th day, you begin to see whether this is going to be a person, or a fish, or a pig, or a hen. And I said, that's a fascinating idea. So that's what I decided to do. There's the pig. You see the fish? Mm-hmm. And there's the child. And there's the wing of the chicken. This was my latest piece of stone. And the thing is, just as I was about 2/3 through, I had the major shapes out there, but not all the details. And I suddenly came to the stage where I don't have the strength anymore physically to work with stone, because it's very, very difficult. So I started looking around for someone to finish it for me. And my son-in-law said, why didn't you ask me? I said, I didn't think you had the time. He says, but you know how much I love sculpture. So he started helping me. He started finishing it for me. I told him what I wanted. I told him the way I wanted it. I told him how to use the power tools, because he'd never done that before. And he finished it for me. This one here is family. One shape strong, one shape softer, connected with the baby. And this one I have in Rabin Medical Center. It's a very light granite. This one was in my first exhibit in Israel. This one was there, Tai Ch was there. I had about 20 different pieces there. And one kid was following me around. He was about 8 years old. And he tried to do the Tai Chi movement, and he was interested in it also. I brought him up to this one, and I said, this one is called Family. Do you see family here? Oh, yes, he sees family there. He says, this is me, the big strong one. This is my younger brother, Ori, and this is our baby brother. No parents around. That's what he saw his family as. This one is in the Ghetto Fighters Museum in Israel. It's called Agony. He's lying on a pile of railroad ties, and he's either wounded or whatever, and he's lying like that, but his fist is closed, still resisting, still fighting, still strong. They would bring groups of students or tourists walking around the museum, and then they would come, the last thing they would do was come and stand in front of that sculpture and discuss what he's projecting, what the feeling is, and the railroad ties, the connotation with the Holocaust. When Shalom passed away, he was buried in Israel. My daughters asked me to do something to put on his stone, on his grave. I called it The Lives He Touched, because when I was trying to symbolize what Shalom represented, he really did touch many lives with his generosity and with his book and just as a human being. And these are 18. 18 is Chai, which is very important in the Jewish religion. And these are the different types of people whose lives he touched, some peripherally, some closer, some in a bigger way, some in a smaller way, some recently, some long ago. And here he is encompassing them all. And this is what I wanted to express. My son-in-law worked with me on this because when I had the idea, I didn't know what I was going to make it out of. And I asked him, does he have something that saws wood or plexiglass? And he said, what do you want it for? And I explained, and he says, why don't you do it in 3D printing? And he knew, even before he suggested it, that I know nothing about 3D printing, and he'd be the one who would have to do it for me. So I worked with him on the computer on the concept. I told him what I wanted. We worked on the image completely, and then he did it in 3D printing, and then we gave it to the Foundry that had it done in bronze. The Foundry made it this size first, so that we could give to my children. Each one of my children, each one of my grandchildren has one. The big one, enlarged from this, is on his grave. This style of work is very typical of me. There's no details, no faces or anything. There's a little pocket here, and you see he's dressed. There are sleeves here and a skirt there, so she's dressed. Her shape of her foot there conveys a feeling of, being shy, and he's whispering to her. And that's my style of work. There are no details, no face, no features, even no buttons, nothing, just minimal. And you've got exactly who they are. You know their children, you know what they're doing, you know how they're dressed. That's it. I was asked to do a sculpture for Peru about a very impressive case, and about a very brave woman who did a lot for Peru. And here she is, and she wrote a lot. She joined the resistance in France, and her weapon was her pen. This is what I'm trying to say. She was a very educated woman, is another thing I wanted to say. I put her on books. And her name is Magdalena Truell. It's not in Peru. It's supposed to be in Peru. They approved it, but they haven't yet decided who's going to pay for it. And therefore it's still in limbo because they have so many political problems right now that creating another sculpture is not a priority. I called it too threatening to deal with. It's so scary that they don't want to see and you don't want to hear, because if you hear and you see what's happening, you have to deal with it somehow. You'd rather be in your own protective little nook and not know what's happening. Nobody knew anything about what was happening. You talk to any of the Germans, oh, we didn't know. Nobody knew anything. It was too scary to know. You had to deal with it if you know. When I couldn't do stone anymore, I had to start thinking of other materials to use. And I have my studio in there in the other room. And that's when I did the wax sticks. And then, as you've noticed here, each piece stands on its own. It's not a collection. And then for the first time in my life, I made a collection. My daughter Yaeli is a life coach. I was very interested to know what she was doing. So I signed up for her classes. I didn't believe that I could get much help. I mean, I know myself pretty well by now. I don't think she needs to tell me who I am. I was surprised at how much benefit I got from it. At one stage, there were a group of us, and she was saying she's giving us 2 months to fulfill a goal. She wants each one to tell what his goal is. So she came to me, she asked me, what do you want? What's your goal? My goal is to have fun. So how are you going to have fun? I said, I'll make fun sculptures. I ordered strips of plexiglass, gave them the size and the color of the plexiglass and exactly what I wanted, and this is what I ordered. Strips of plexiglass, and I cut it in half here, that's for the legs. And I cut it in 3 here, that's the arms and the head. And then I started heating it with a hot air gun, because when you heat it, it becomes very pliable, like fabric, very pliable. So you work with gloves because it's very, very hot. And when it becomes soft, you shape it. But you can't shape the whole thing at once, like in an oven or something. You can't heat it all at once, because once it starts cooling, if you keep trying to bend it, it'll crack. So you decide, this is the foot, and you heat it until it's pliable, and you shape what you want to do with it. You want the body to twist, you use this part and you move it. You want the arms to come forward, you bring them forward. Whatever you want to do, you have to do each shape separately. And then I put them on a base and give it a title, and it's done. So that's my series. So I started off with 6 or something, and it just keeps growing. I've done about 25 different movements, and I still have a few other ideas in mind. These are the 3 monkeys, and they're going to be on a base. And this is the baby monkey that's trying to get away. This is the mother monkey. And this is the father monkey. They'll be sitting on a base. And the mother monkey, with her tail, will be closing his eyes so that he shouldn't see the evil. He is holding his hands this way. He doesn't want to hear. And with his tail, he's shutting her mouth so that she shouldn't talk. These are my variation family dynamics. I always used to draw ever since I was 10 years old or so. And I never thought of myself as a future artist or anything of that sort. And I started sculpting because I couldn't find a setup I was comfortable in. When I came to the States, I tried all kinds of things. Couldn't find my place in it. And I decided to, so let's see what happens if I try sculpting. I was 50 when I started sculpting. I was 60 when I had my first solo exhibit in Israel. So everything took off from then, which isn't all that long ago. I mean, I'm 88 now. Let's say 30 years of work.